All right. Hello again, Avengers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 2044. And today, I'm going to talk about Daggerheart again because I never got to make this video because I got super sick after my last session. So, if anyone is unaware, I ran a Daggerheart mini campaign, let's call it. I think in total it was 4 episodes or 4 sessions. And what I did is I have owned a digital version of the Temple of Elemental Evil for years. I got it through DriveThruRPG. The Temple of Elemental Evil is probably my favorite TTRPG adventure ever written. I have loved it for years. I was not around when it was first published. And every single time there's been a chance for me to kind of interact with that world, I've done it. I own and have run Princes of the Apocalypse, which is the 5e adventure, I guess, inspired by the Temple of Elemental Evil. It is not like a retelling of the Temple of Elemental Evil. Like Curse of Strahd is literally the first Ravenloft adventure, just updated to 5e and some extra stuff added in to make it flow a little bit better for 5e players. Prince of the Apocalypse is a brand new story, brand new characters. It doesn't even have a Temple of Elemental Evil, but it was based on the same kind of idea. So I have that. I have, if you look over here, these are the D&D Adventure System board games. I believe I have the Temple of Elemental Evil version of that board game. It was the last of the D&D Adventure board game systems games that came out. I haven't had a chance to physically play it. I've played the rest of them. I played which one was it? I played Legend of Drizzt a lot with friends and things like that. I think I've done Castle Ravenloft once. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Castle Ravenloft. And then Wrath of Shardalon. I haven't personally played that one. But I own all of them. I love them to death. So, realizing there was very little chance I was ever going to get a chance to play the actual adventure or run the actual adventure, I thought it might be fun to use Daggerheart as a way to get people to play it. But not the whole thing, just the Village of Hommlet, which was the first adventure. The Temple of Elemental Evil is actually, I believe it's called the T series of adventures. The reason is because they're labeled T1, T2, T3, T4. So it's technically 4 adventures that all kind of work together. But the Village of Hommlet was released significantly earlier as its own thing. And then years later, they released T2, T3, T4 and kind of attached it to the Village of Hommlet. So decided to run it for Daggerheart. We had an absolute blast. I got to play with a few people that I play with regularly on Wednesday nights. And then I also got to bring in a gentleman named, his online name is Toast and Waffles. So we just call him Toast. And we had an absolute blast. It was really, really fun. But the Village of Hommlet was not written for Daggerheart. Weird, yeah. Something that was written in the 70s was not written for something that didn't come out until 2024. It's so weird, or 2025, sorry. I know, right? But what I'm talking about is the Village of Hommlet was an early D&D dungeon crawl. And it was designed to be kind of baby's first dungeon crawl. It was designed for first level characters. And it had just about a little bit of everything you would want to see in a dungeon crawl. There were traps. There were secret doors and hidden passages. There were something that was very common in old school D&D there's actually a portion of the lower dungeon area that if you explore long enough, your characters all die because they get lost in the maze beneath this moat house, never to be seen again. So there was instant death, and there was treasure everywhere. Every single, or almost every single room had some sort of treasure in it, whether it was weapons and armor, magic items, potions, lots and lots of gold, and other things that had a gold value attached to them. And Daggerheart is not designed to run an adventure like that. Like, the Village of Hommlet is very roleplay light. There are specific places in the adventure where they kind of allow for role playing. Specifically, the Village of Hommlet itself, there's lots of role playing opportunities there. And then the final fight with Lareth, they have an entire write up of how Lareth is supposed to act and what he's supposed to do and things like that. And so Lareth is designed to have a little bit of role playing, but the rest of the adventure is meant to just be, we're exploring, now we're fighting, now we're exploring, now we're fighting. And that's just really not what Daggerheart is designed to do. And running an adventure that technically isn't a great fit for Daggerheart really taught me a lot about kind of the best ways to run a Daggerheart game. And I thought you guys might be interested in this. So, without any further ado, let's first talk about the stuff that worked really well. The Village of Hommlet in and of itself is great. The village itself... thank you, phone. The village itself is laid out really, really well. It comes with a map that your players can use to kind of pick out where they want to go. There are tons of NPCs there. Most of them have write-ups and things about, motivations and the things like that. And there's a few little subplots in the village itself that allows for the characters to kind of get drawn into the world there. Daggerheart, being a narrative-focused game, really, really shines when you allow for role-playing opportunities in general. So the first part with any other group would have been amazing. Now, why do you say with any other group? Well, if you haven't watched the game, I did upload every single episode to the channel. So if you want to go there, they're in their own playlist. It's the... I can't remember what I called it. I think it was the Village of Hommlet, Daggerheart Village of Hommlet, something like that. You should be able to find them relatively easy. They're relatively recent. My players came in, and the first thing that happened was one of the players had the ability to talk to animals. Had a conversation with one of the animals, and the thing that they don't do in the Village of Hommlet is give you an idea of what the animals would do. So I had to go in, and what the animals think. So I had to go entirely off of the description of the card, because if I remember correctly, I think he rolled with fear when he tried talking to it, and basically what it said is that, yeah, you can talk to them, but they're going to be a little bit angry or something like that. And so I had this very kind of condescending horse, I think it was, that was just yelling at them the entire time. They went over to just pick some, because they're like, well, let me find some food for the horse. I said, there's an apple tree over there. And they went over and picked the apples and got in trouble with the law for stealing. Because that, growing up, not even Wisconsin, in Arizona, we had a neighbor that had fruit trees. And one of the things that used to annoy him was the idea that he had some fruit trees in his front yard, and people would just come up and steal his fruit because they were in his front yard, and he didn't have like a fence or anything like that, because in that part of Arizona, it just wasn't really a thing to have a fenced-in front yard. Backyard's completely fenced in, but that was also because we had an alley behind our house. So the alley was formed effectively by all of the fenced-in backyards. So my initial thought, having known people that have fruit trees, that people just think, oh, it's a tree, I can just take the fruit for myself, was that someone would get angry, they get in trouble with the law, and it allowed for a lot of fun role-playing. They then get to the tavern, which there's a couple different kind of subplots you can deal with there. Some slight spoilers that they never found out. There are actually some cult members of the Cult of Elemental Evil in there. And if they hear you asking around, or especially since what's supposed to happen with this adventure is you go to the Temple of Elemental Evil, and then when you've spent all your resources, you leave and go back to the Village of Hommlet to sleep in a safe place. Because in the temple, it's not safe enough to sleep, and short rests weren't a thing in first edition D&D. And so what's supposed to happen is you keep coming back, and you'll come back to the tavern a lot because there's lots of different people there, and eventually these two dudes will realize what you're doing, and either they will try to join you to act as foils, or they'll just try to kill you. And so that aspect in and of itself was pretty cool. My players decided to pick a fight, ended up setting the bar on fire, and it made the most sense because of the rolls that they made to just kick them out of the town, which is perfectly fine. It allowed me to just get them to the moat house quickly, and I didn't have to come up with a reason for them to start exploring the moat house. Again, there's like 3 or 4 different NPCs or groups of NPCs you can talk to that will give you a reason to explore it, but they pissed them all off. So once we got to the actual temple, combat in Daggerheart works really, really well. And I've said this over and over again. I'm going to just keep saying it. Combat runs so incredibly smooth, especially once your players kind of get comfortable with each other, because the first combat that we did was against a bunch of giant toads, which is a rough fight. In the original adventure, it was a challenging fight here. It wasn't, bad enough that people were like, oh man, I don't know what we're going to do. Whereas in the original Temple of Elemental Evil, you could lose a couple players in that first fight because no one expects it. But combat itself just ran really smoothly as the players got more familiar with their characters. It became smoother and smoother. The spotlight system just works really, really well. And really the only time you start to see issues with the spotlight system is very early on, when the players don't really know each other very well. And so they're all kind of worrying about stepping on someone else's toes. And they're always like, can I take the spotlight? Once they get comfortable, it basically just turns into, and this is a phrase, if you're ever running Daggerheart, you need to get used to using this phrase. Who wants the spotlight? I cannot tell you how effective that is in kind of motivating the players to act on their own, and to kind of jump in. Because I'm not going, whose turn is it next? Or who is going to take the next. It's just, who wants the spotlight next? And it gives them the ability to go, I want the spotlight to do this, and it just works really, really well. The exploration aspects of it actually works relatively well using Daggerheart. We had a map, actually went and purchased a set of maps that were, I believe they were made in Incarnate, because they look very familiar to me, and I use Incarnate all the Incarnate. That's what it's called. It's Incarnate. Um, uh, I didn't want to use the black and white like really really shitty maps that come with it, and so I got these ones that are in full color and they look very very pretty. Um, and exploring around, especially in Roll20, was really really easy. Like I had an absolute blast letting them explore each individual room. And then when they got to the dungeon area, I actually went and placed every single monster from the adventure. I placed it in the correct room and everything. So anytime they came into a new room or they were able to see a new area, they would instantly be able to see, oh, there's bad guys in there. And that was actually really fun. And the exploration aspect of it worked somewhat well. The players themselves, by pure accident, made a beeline for the final boss. And I wasn't expecting it. They weren't expecting it. No one was doing it on purpose. They're just like, we'll go to the left. Okay, we'll go this way. Um, and yeah, but the actual exploration aspect for Daggerheart worked really, really well. Because again, you could use the spotlight system if you wanted. It's like, okay, you've used the spotlight. Who wants it next? Using a map with Daggerheart works well. If you've watched any of the Age of Umbra playthroughs, they use maps for everything, and it just works fine. I used a gridded map because that's what I'm used to, and I like grids. They make things easier for me. And yeah, that was perfectly fine. Combat balance in and of itself takes a little bit of time to learn. Um, but yeah, overall, like, combat worked really, really well. The exploration aspect, like, there's everything that you need in Daggerheart to run a dungeon crawl. Like, it works perfectly fine that way. It's just not really designed for that. So, those are the things that worked well. Let's talk about the things that didn't work and kind of informed my understanding of how to run Daggerheart next. So, first thing, probably the biggest thing, is, again, with Daggerheart being a narrative-focused game, the game plays best when the players are allowed to role play. And I'm not saying that combat doesn't work or anything like that. It works really, really well. However, the vast majority of monsters in the Village of Hommlet are, for the most part, mindless. Like, you fight things like giant frogs that can't talk, giant ticks, giant wolf spiders, zombies, slimes, an ogre that's very, very stupid. And they never actually got to interact with the intelligent creatures aside from a group of bandits whom, unfortunately for them, they tipped off that they were coming and the bandits tried to kill them as opposed to, like, parlaying. Which is, again, written into the adventure. Like, there's certain things that they can do that, depending on what actions they take and where they go, the bandits might find out that they're coming early. They might try to parlay with them. They might try to just run away. Because of what my players did, the bandits decided they were just going to kill them. So they lost a role-playing opportunity there due to no fault of their own. Just how the dice kind of fell. But there was also bugbears in there. There were kobolds, I think, in there. And there was also the cultists themselves. And Daggerheart in and of itself works best when, as part of combat, you have some sort of a story going on as well. Having it's not that you can't have, like, mindless enemies or, like, beasts and things like that, but the best combat you're going to run in Daggerheart is not going to be exclusively, okay, I go over here and kill this person, okay, then I take the spotlight and I go over here. It's going to be kind of intermixed with combat and then conversation, and combat and conversation. And I do that a lot in my D&D games. And I think you really should do that in every TTRPG. It's something that I learned actually when I was studying fight direction for stage combat and things like that. Is a fight in any kind of show needs to tell a story. It needs to be part of the narrative. It can't be, oh, we're doing stuff and we're singing, we're dancing. Oh, fight happens. Now we just ignore everything else that's going on and it's a cool little fight scene. No, the entire purpose of having combat in a production is it tells a different story in a different method than you can tell anywhere else. It's the same reason why musicals have musical numbers in them, because you can tell the story in a different way than you can using just dialogue. So relate that back to TTRPGs in general. Anytime a combat encounter is happening, there should be the opportunity to tell some sort of a story. Whether that is kind of reinforcing the kind of danger that you're in. And in that case, again, you can have like mindless creatures that's attacking them, but part of the combat should be more than just, and then the zombie tries to bite you. It should be something like, as this zombie falls, you see it fall into kind of a puddle of, muscle and bone on the floor. And as you look around, you can see the dimly lit dungeon that you're in just feels even more encroaching as more and more space around you is covered in viscera. The zombies aren't saying anything, but you're using that story to kind of reinforce this is a bad place. And it will affect how the players interact with everything. So because the Village of Hommlet was not designed to tell a story like that, a lot of the combat turned just into, okay, I'm going to spend some fear to do some stuff. Who wants the spotlight? All right. Who wants the spotlight next? All right. I'm going to take the spotlight and do this. And it wasn't that it was bad or anything. Everybody had a lot of fun. But it definitely would have been better if I had been able to weave a little bit more story into the encounters than I was able to do. The other thing that didn't work particularly well, and this was on me entirely, it had nothing to do with the Village of Hommlet. The Village of Hommlet has encounters, tons of encounters. Again, dungeon crawls, old school dungeon crawls, are basically built like this. Here is a maze. The maze has a bunch of rooms in it. Every single room has either a trap or an encounter in it. And if you can solve that, you get loot. Like, that's all you need to run a classic dungeon crawl. You need a maze with rooms, and then you need encounters or traps and some loot. There, you've got an entire dungeon crawl. And that's how dungeon crawls existed for like 25 years. You didn't start getting too much variation on that idea when you were doing a dungeon crawl. You didn't get too much variation on that until kind of mid second edition, and then third edition stories started becoming a little bit more popular. Now, there were some rare things like Curse of Strahd. I did an entire video on the original Ravenloft adventure and how that really changed the game with the idea of a very story-focused adventure. But people were still playing dungeon crawl. People still play dungeon crawls today. They're fun. They're just not particularly taxing. So anyway, the Village of Hommlet had a bunch of stat blocks for all the different monsters in there. They also had random encounters that you could have attack them and things like that. I had prepared all the random encounters. I never used them because I was still a little bit overwhelmed kind of learning everything and teaching everyone everything. But yeah, so you could have random encounters. You could have all these things. However, combat design for original D&D was, for the most part, here is some hit points. Make them go away before they make your hit points go away. encounter design was not particularly complex, unless you started having like spellcasters involved. And Lareth was a spellcaster, but the most that he did is he had a few daily spells, and then he had a magic mace that he would use, and that was really it. It was really just designed to be kind of a war game simulation, which is what it was coming from. Like again, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson were war gamers before they created D&D. And so a lot of early D&D mimicked war games where it was mostly like position your units in the right spot so that you can do enough damage to the bad guy. There wasn't really role playing. There wasn't a whole lot of complexity to the encounters. It was hit points versus hit points. Daggerheart is not designed that way. And I learned really, really quickly that something that I love about Daggerheart, that they stole directly from D&D 4th edition, and I love them for this, is you have monster categories. And basically what those are is there's a bunch of different categories or types of monsters, and each one is designed to work differently. And one of the things that was great about D&D 4th edition was because of the different monster types that existed, when you were looking through like the monster manual, it would have little suggestions next to some of the monsters that go, by the way, if you wanted to use this monster, pair it up with these particular monsters and it will be this kind of a challenge for this level group. And the thing that made 4th edition combat so interesting was that the monsters, like if you only had one type of monster, there's a lot of them, but only one type, combat was very, very boring because all the monsters just did the same thing. But if you started mixing and matching different monster types, things started getting really interesting and fun. And that's how Daggerheart is designed to work. Combat encounters are not meant to be, okay, here's 20 zombies, deal with them. Combat encounters are meant to mix up a bunch of different kinds of monsters to create interesting encounters. And for the most part, there was only 3 encounters in the entire thing where I actually took that to heart. The bandits, I had a leader in there. I had some ranged units. I had some melee units. Like I did a little mix up of stuff, and it would have been a very interesting encounter. Unfortunately for me, the players, as soon as they saw the bad guys, instantly did a tag team attack, which killed the leader and 2 other guys instantly. And in the adventure, it mentioned that, yeah, if the bandits see things are going poorly, they will get the hell out of there. And so I had everybody except the big, stupid, dumb guy run away, and then they killed that guy pretty quickly. The other one, the Bugbear encounter, I had a bunch of different unit types in there, and that would have been a very interesting encounter, especially since there was like multiple levels. There was like a dais that they were on, so it would have required people kind of moving around a little bit. They never got to see that one. And then the final battle with Lareth was technically a 3-part battle. You had 4 guards, and then if things were going poorly, they would call in some more guards that had some ranged units and some bruiser units. And then if they made enough noise, Lareth would come out, who is a spellcaster. But just due to how it played and how well the party was working with each other, the final combat was not impressive in any way, shape, or form. It did its job. The players had fun, but they never really felt threatened with that. And something that I found out is the best way to design combat encounters is you need a mix of units that synergize with each other. And if you look at the like bestiary section of the Daggerheart core book, they do group enemies together that complement each other. Like you had all the different guard units were all grouped together, and you had bruiser versions, you had soldier versions, you had horde versions. I can't remember if they had a horde version of that. and then you had a leader version in there. And by mixing and matching those different things together, you would create these really interesting dynamic encounters, especially once you start playing around with leaders. Leaders, by far, are going to give you the biggest change to how the game plays. Because they can do things like a lot of leaders have the ability to activate multiple units using a small amount of fear. Like the leader unit that I had with the guards for Lareth. Lareth was his own thing. He was a solo monster. The leader unit was able to activate 5 units by spending 2 fear. It was incredibly useful. Because it meant that I could do a lot of different things all at this at the same time, and the players just kind of had to react to it. And it gave them a huge incentive to target the leader, to be able to deal with this stuff. So, for combat design in Daggerheart, you really do need mix it up. Try a bunch of different things. Put some minions in there, and then a bruiser, and then a soldier, and a leader. Mix it up as much as you can. Look for units that synergize with each other. For the Bugbear one, the Bugbear leader that was with them had this ability where as soon as they attacked, it would start a countdown. And when the countdown was over, every single ranged unit within, I think it was far range, would all make an attack. So that particular unit shines when there's a decent number of ranged units. And in order for them to not instantly be destroyed, you also are going to need to have some meat walls, effectively, that are going to kind of trip up the players. And that creates a really interesting encounter. Because the first time the countdown goes down, the players are probably going to be worried, why is there a countdown going on? But they're really not going to know what to do to stop it, aside from the narration that you put on of he's telling these people to prepare. But once the countdown happens, then they instantly realize, oh, this is really bad. We need to come up with a way to either deal with these archers or deal with the leader, because that was rough. That was probably the biggest thing that I learned from Village of Hommlet is just you don't even need to be a good combat designer for Daggerheart combat to be fun. You just need to understand, okay, let's not just put 5 of the same unit against them, because that's going to turn into a very, very boring combat. And that's not where Daggerheart shines. The thing that makes Daggerheart so unique and so much fun, in my personal opinion, is that the game is constantly changing while you're playing it. Whoever has the spotlight is going to steer the game in a certain direction, and because of the duality dice, even when they have the spotlight, the dice are going to kind of force you into different paths that you might not have been suspecting. Another thing that's really useful about leader units is a lot of them have ways to generate fear, which is another thing that I've seen some GMs complain about is, well, what happens when your players are rolling with hope all the time? You're not generating fear. You're not able to do a lot of different things. 100%, that can be a problem, which is why there are units that are specifically designed to be able to not just create fear, but can create multiple fear from a single attack. One of my leader units just had a passive ability. Whenever they succeed on an attack against a unit, they generate fear, and they had an ability that was just an area attack, and every unit that failed it would also generate fear. So I could generate a decent amount of fear even if my players were doing really, really well. So again, it all comes back to the idea of put different types of units into every single combat encounter. Even if, again, even if you're translating something like an old school D&D adventure where it's just, well, these are just supposed to be giant frogs. Well, that worked perfectly fine for original D&D because that's what the game is designed around. Daggerheart isn't. So flavor them as all giant frogs, but maybe have one of the frogs be a little bit bigger. Maybe one of them is like a horny toad kind of thing, or the other ones are just regular toads. Or, you know, make one of them, you know, have an extra long tongue, and that's going to be your ranged unit. You know, you have so much freedom to reflavor and reskin the things in any tabletop RPG. Like I did it in 4th edition. I do it in 5th edition all the time. I will find a monster and I like that stat block. I don't like the monster, and so I will just pick a stat block that I like, and then I just reskin everything about it, describe it completely differently, and my players have no idea. It's especially good if you have very experienced players who might have seen, like, you know, if you bring a troll into a game with a bunch of experienced players, they're all going to know, okay, we need fire or acid. But if you bring a robot in that seems to have a self-repairing feature, they're not going to realize that it's a troll, but they are going to recognize, well, it keeps healing itself. How do we turn off the healing? Well, I guess cauterizing the circuit so they can't reattach. Maybe that's what it is. Or what about just melting the circuit so that they have nothing to attach to? That's fire and acid right there. But just by reskinning it, it makes things different. And so, yeah. Anyway, other than that, like I said, I had an absolute blast running it. It has given me an idea for running other classic adventures that I've never gotten a chance to run, including, if you guys look way down there, that right there behind my Power Ranger sword, that is an adventure called The Madness at Gardmore Abbey. It was the final adventure released for D&D 4th edition, and it is, other than like Village of, Temple of Elemental Evil, that one is probably my second favorite adventure ever, and I've never gotten a chance to run it. I got to run a preview adventure for it once, and then before I was able to have them actually go through it, the group disbanded. So I definitely would love to run the Madness at Gardmore Abbey, because that one, it's already got maps and things like that. And it's, fun fact, this is my original deck of many things, and I got it from the Madness at Gardmore Abbey. I have had this deck for over a decade now, because part of the subplot of the Madness of Gardmore Abbey is, long before the adventure begins, the deck of many things shows up at Gardmore Abbey, and the abbey itself is under siege by a bunch of orcs who are winning. And so in desperation, one of the monks at Gardmore Abbey gets the deck of many things out and pulls a card. Unfortunately for him, the card that he pulls is the Ruin card. And because of that, it causes the abbey to be ruined. And the deck scatters itself amongst the abbey. Well, years and years and years later, your adventuring party has heard the rumors that there is a powerful magic item at Gardmore Abbey, and they decide to go explore it. And it has everything you would want in a D&D adventure. There's a red dragon that you have to fight. There's a beholder in there. There is a competing party of adventurers that are trying to get the various cards of the deck so that they themselves can get it. And probably my favorite thing about it, every single card has an actual effect that happens in battle. So once you collect, you don't have to completely bring the deck together for it to do things for you. So with each new card that the party finds, they can decide to use it in battle to give them advantages and the things like that. It is by far one of the coolest adventures that have ever been written. So maybe that's what I'll do next, is I'll do the Madness at Gardmore Abbey. Who knows? I just know that this Daggerheart thing with the Village of Hommlet was one of the most fun times I have had running adventures, and it was an absolute blast. So interested to hear from you guys. First of all, do you guys have any questions for me specifically about how running an adventure not written for Daggerheart worked? If I get enough questions, I'll actually do like a full Q&A video for you guys. And then in addition to that, what are your guys' opinions of Daggerheart thus far? I know a lot of you guys are familiar with it. I don't know how many of you guys have played. A few of you have had a chance to play. I think some of you have had a chance to run. Do you have any other tips or tricks that you've learned from either playing Daggerheart or running Daggerheart? Leave them in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's going to be all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.